Hello, welcome to another episode of Field of Screams Podcast. Today we will be talking about the movie Leave the World Behind. Now, when I first saw this movie, it was on Netflix, and the trailer showed that the movie had Ethan Hawke, Julia Roberts, and Kevin Bacon. That's quite the cast. With promises of them three being in the movie, and the movie showing apocalyptic type things happening, I was like, I need to check out this film. I need to see what it's about. A synopsis of this movie's plot. We have characters Amanda, who is Julia Roberts, played by Julia Roberts. We have her husband Clay, played by Ethan Hawke. They take their two kids on a little impromptu weekend getaway at a vacation rental house, which is a very nice house. And while they are there, the Wi-Fi goes out, and then all of a sudden the owner of the house, George H. Scott, and his daughter Ruth show up randomly in the night, wanting to know if they can stay at the house. Now, as George and Ruth are asking if they can stay, there was a bunch of weird stuff that had happened prior. There was a cruise ship that crashed onto a beach that the family was staying at. Of course, the Wi-Fi going out. There's a TV kind of just signaling that some broadcast is happening, and these people basically don't know what's going on. And then, these strangers showing up, wanting to stay, that kind of spooks the family itself. And then we just kind of watch the world fall apart as these two families try to coexist in this house. When George asks if they can stay at the house, it is their house. There's kind of a dynamic split between Ethan Hawke's character and Julia Roberts' character. Ethan Hawke, you can tell he's a really nice guy. His character Clay, really nice guy. He wants to invite him right in. He doesn't question anything. To whereas Amanda, Julia Roberts' character, she does not want them to stay at all. She is very suspicious of them, questions parts of their story, which granted there was a part of the movie to where she kind of catches George in a lie. And why was he lying? I'm not really sure. But when she does, it's kind of like, ooh, maybe Amanda was right. Maybe Ethan Hawke is being way too nice. The thing this movie does really well, it keeps you guessing. Random weird things happen. Ethan Hawke goes on some adventure to, I forget what he was looking for really, but then he runs into a drone that's like dropping these pamphlets all over the place. It freaks Ethan Hawke out. It turns out those pamphlets said death to America in some different language. For the whole beginning of the movie, you're just wondering if George and Ruth, do they have bad intentions being in that house? And I gotta admit, I was pretty interested. It's well acted, the dialogue's very good, it keeps you on edge. And then as soon as you start to get bored, like random things happen, like random hordes of deer just come near their house for some weird reason, and I don't know, it's just odd. You're wondering what's going on the whole entire time. It is an entertaining film. It keeps you captivated. The one thing I was disappointed about is Kevin Bacon's only in this movie for about 5 minutes. When you promise bacon, you should come with lots of bacon, not just a little bit, but it is what it is. He is in the movie, so I guess they can't advertise it. The basics of this movie, it really just kind of challenges the fundamental stability of families and people in general of how they trust each other in very hard times. We all watch the news, and whenever COVID came about, I don't know if you can recall, but when lots of people were storming Walmarts, getting as much toilet paper as possible, I think I recall an article of a man being stabbed over toilet paper. When things get tough, humans tend to freak out a bit, and this movie kind of highlights that. They make decisions that they regret, and it's just kind of an interesting film going about that, because it does make you wonder, if crap hits the fan, how would I react? And you wouldn't know until it happens. I will say one thing watching this movie, Julia Roberts' character Amanda. As the film went, I did not care for her character that much at all. Originally when she's very suspicious of George and his daughter. Like, I get it. Like, this is a rough situation you're in. You don't know what's going on. But as it keeps going, like, she's just very mean to Ruth. And Ruth kind of brings it on, too. Ruth says some things that, it's like, man, you're trying to stay at these people's house. Like, why are you antagonizing? But Julia Roberts does not help herself at all. And there's even a part in the movie to where her and George, like, they're kind of drinking and they're listening to music and they're dancing. And it's kind of like, okay, this is getting a little bit risky here. But then she kind of like throws herself on George for a little bit. But then she's like, oh, I'm married. And then like towards the end, like Ruth is kind of having a heart-to-heart where she kind of finds out that her mom is basically dead. She like assumes it. And Amanda is still kind of rough on her in a way. And it's like, why don't you tone it down? Like, what's your problem? Her character was very prickly, in my opinion. And even the climax of that character, her and Ruth were out by a shed and all these deer like surround them. And the way they kind of fight it off is her and Ruth start like just screaming, trying to scare away the deer. And you can tell it's like CGI. I thought their kind of conclusion wrap up of that problem was pretty cheesy and kind of silly. It kind of had me laugh, and I wasn't tense over that. A tense moment in this film would be where George drives out to another house to check something, and all of a sudden this plane comes and just crashes. And George is like running away as the plane's crashing and destroying everything around him. That was a pretty tense moment in the film, and a pretty good moment. Unlike Julia Roberts and Ruth's little scene. Yeah, I don't know what that was all about. But we finally get Kevin Bacon at the end. Ethan Hawke and George and Ethan Hawke's son, they drive over to Kevin Bacon's house because Ethan Hawke's son is like very sick. His teeth are falling out. He's throwing up. They're really worried what's going on. They think he might have been bit by a tick and he has Lyme disease. They don't know. So they go to Kevin Bacon's house, who is a friend of George. And Kevin Bacon opens up the door with a gun, pointing at them. And Ethan Hawke, being like the nice guy he is, he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, we'll leave right away. And George is just like, no, we are not leaving. And Ethan Hawke's like, what are we doing here? It is a cool little tense scene. They're demanding Kevin Bacon to help them. Kevin Bacon really does not want to. He's kind of like, listen, we're all on our own now. And it goes back and forth, and eventually they're walking out of Kevin Bacon's house, but George is kind of asking Kevin Bacon, what does he think that's going on? And I'm kind of rubbing my hands together, and I'm like, okay, here it is, this big conclusion, like, what is it? And Kevin Bacon's just like, don't you know? Don't you think it's a little obvious? And I'm like, all right, let's go, spill it, Bacon. Like, what's going on? And then Kevin Bacon gives this spiel of like, well, someone's hacking our government, and they're trying to cause anarchy. And like, I just kind of sat there on my couch, and Ethan Hawke and George like look at each other like, oh my gosh. And then it like does this scene where Julia Roberts looks at New York City, and it's like on fire, being bombed or something. And everything's acting like this is just shocking. And I'm just sitting there like, well, duh. Like, everything's going bad. Like, of course the government's being overthrown. What did you think that was happening? Did you think this was a UFO invasion? But, I mean, it was just very on the nose. I was hoping for a more literal answer as to what was going on, but I guess that's kind of the mystique and what's attractive about this film, because it doesn't come right out and say it. It lets you use your imagination, and you can put the pieces together. People like me, that might aggravate you a little bit. I was when I got done with it. I was like, wow, I feel like I spent 3 hours just watching random things happen, and I didn't get an answer for it. Did I hate it? No. I was just disappointed by the end. Now, granted, there is a funny bit to where Ethan Hawke and Julia Roberts' daughter, I mean, she's been dying to watch Friends this entire time the movie's been going on. Like, she's watching this show she wants to watch the rest of this show. And she does run away from home, and she finds a spot where there's an underground bunker. And in the underground bunker is a bunch of these VHSs and DVDs. And of course she finds friends. And the movie ends with her finding friends, putting it on TV, and she's happy. Yeah, it was kind of a weird way to end it. I mean, it's kind of funny, but, after the whole government's collapsing thing, they just kind of go to a comedic moment, which, whatever. I do know a lot of people that did enjoy this film a lot. I would probably give it a 6 or 7 out of 10. It's entertaining. It keeps you captivated. Just the one thing that might aggravate you is the ending. That was the only nitpick I had about it. But yeah, that's my review for Leave the World Behind. If you haven't seen it, maybe check it out. If you have seen it, comment below, tell me what you think. I have been marathon reviewing the Friday the 13th series for, if you don't know and you're checking out the channel, so feel free to check those out if you enjoy those movies, and feel free to subscribe because that helps the channel, and feel free to give the video a like because it gets this video out to other users, and I really appreciate that type of stuff. Well, now I gotta go work on Friday the 13th Part 7. So if you are a fan of Friday the 13th, be prepared for that. Until next time, guys.